We were out of town at a wedding when we got a phone call that no parent wants to ever receive. Our beautiful 18-year-old daughter, Victoria, had died from a drug overdose. And I came back and I wanted to crawl into bed and pull the covers over my head and be a basket case, but instead I determined that I'm going to dedicate the rest of my life to doing something about the drug epidemic. And so I called my executives together and I said, guys, and all of them had been with me over 20 years, I said, guys, you are going to be running the company from now on. I'm going to find out what I can do to save lives. And that's what I've done ever since. And I want to tell you, what I found out is mind-boggling. There is no sense of urgency in this country to end this drug epidemic. I didn't even know at the time what a marijuana cigarette looked like. I didn't know anybody that used drugs. I thought that all addicts lived under bridges and slept on park benches. I had no idea that the more affluent you are, the more chance that you have an addict in your family. And I decided I would first learn about this horrible epidemic, or I should say pandemic. And I went to Washington, D.C., and I met with the Surgeon General, and I found out that he was clueless. He had no idea what to do about it. I met with the director of the DEA, and they had thrown up their hands and said, we can't stop the drugs from coming in from Mexico and from Colombia. I've traveled the country. I went to rehabs all over the country, Hazleton, Betty Ford, and Riverbend, and Georgia Detox. Then I went to a methadone clinic in Las Vegas run by Sheldon Adelson's wife, Miriam. And I talked to experts all over the country. And today, I know more about the drug epidemic than almost anybody else in this country. And last night, I had a doctor at my house that owns 5 rehab centers in South Florida. And we had a very good 2-hour discussion about the drug epidemic. And he said, I can't believe you know as much about it as you do. And I said, well, this is all I've been doing for the last 23 months. And there was a bill in Congress that had been stuck there for 3 years. And I got a call from the author of the bill to see what I could do to move it along. And I went to Washington. I spent 2 months up in Washington off and on. I met with every senator, every congressman, everybody I could talk to. I spoke in front of committees. The bill got moved along, and last July it passed almost unanimously in both the House and the Senate, and President Obama signed it into law. But guess what? They passed the bill, but they didn't fund it. And I'm looking at the current budget that they just approved to see if maybe the funding for that bill, it's called the CARA Act, C-A-R-A. It's the Comprehensive Addiction and Recovery Act. It will save thousands of lives. And I'm hoping that they had the foresight to fund it, but I'm waiting to see. But a lot of you don't know that this epidemic affects everybody in this room. If you have children that are under the age of 15, be careful. At 15 is when everyone starts experimenting with marijuana, 14, 15 years old. You know, I like to tell people that America is under attack, and not by ISIS, not by North Korea, not by Syria, but by drugs. We have the worst drug epidemic in history. It's going up 10% a year. There are 50,000 people that died last year from a drug overdose. 50,000. And this is not, as I said, people living under bridges. This is our future generation. This is our future Steve Jobs, our future Bill Gates. This is the people that are going to be, if they live, are going to be running our country in the future. And we're losing them. 160 died yesterday. 160 will die today. And it's not terminal cancer. There is a lot of things that can be done. This epidemic can be ended. I wrote a letter to President Trump, and I outlined a 6-page plan on how we can end this epidemic. And it, like I said, it's not terminal cancer. It can be ended if we want to end it. And when I hear about passing marijuana bills, and I know that every heroin addict in this country and in this city and in this state started at 14, 15 using marijuana, and then I see where they pass marijuana bills, it's the worst thing that possibly done. The public got hoodwinked thinking that marijuana was going to help people. It's not going to help them. If everybody that needed marijuana were to get marijuana, buy marijuana, it wouldn't even be a dot on the map. It wouldn't even be a viable industry to be in. And yet marijuana today is a bigger industry than cereal. Unbelievable, but it's a bigger industry. And so many states, and Florida just passed the medical marijuana bill. That is only a stepping stone to recreational marijuana. You'll see in the next few years they'll be talking about recreational. That's what happened in Colorado. That's what happened in California. Most states start with medical. People think, wow, we're going to help a lot of people. They don't know that there are drugs that do the same thing that medical marijuana does. In Florida, it's called Charlotte's Web, and nobody knows about it. It was approved 2 years ago. It has the part of marijuana that makes you high is the THC content, and Charlotte's Web is made from marijuana. It has a very low THC factor. You can't get high on it, but it'll stop seizures. It'll stop. It'll help terminal cancer patients and all. But nobody knows about it. They don't talk about it. And a couple weeks ago, I spoke to 100 inmates at our Orange County jail. They were all in there for drug offenses. And I asked them, how many of you started experimenting with marijuana when you were 14, 15? And every hand went up. Every rehab that I visited around the country, I sit in on counseling sessions, heroin addicts, cocaine addicts, prescription drug addicts, and guess what? They all start 14, 15 with marijuana. If you have children that are approaching that age, you have to drug test them. Drug testing your children is the greatest deterrent against them starting, and it's the greatest defense against peer pressure. And believe me, the peer pressure out there is strong. Everybody wants to be cool, and when their friend says, smoke a joint with me and be as cool as I am, they have to be able to say, I'm as cool as you are, but my parents drug test me, and I'm afraid if I do, I'm going to get in trouble. So you have to, it takes tough love, but you have to be willing to drug test your children or your grandchildren or your nephews or nieces or whatever. And I've been pushing for drug testing in the school system here in Orange County. I think we're getting close to a pilot program, but we have to start somewhere. In middle school, when the 14, 15-year-olds are in middle school, that's when to start drug testing. All private schools in Orange County are drug-free because they have drug testing. Lake Highlands, Windermere Prep, First Academy, all do drug testing, and they're drug-free. Isn't that a shame that private schools can be drug-free? Our public schools, you can buy drugs in the hallway at any public school in Orange County. Second thing I'm pushing, and that's enough about drug testing. Believe me, like I said, it takes tough love. Drug test your children. Tell their parents, if you have friends, drug test your children. Second thing, there is a drug called naloxone. How many of you have heard of naloxone? Anybody? Few hands gone up. Naloxone was developed 47 years ago. In fact, same year that I moved to Orlando. It's FDA approved. It's 100% safe, and no one knows about it. It had never been promoted, and it is the antidote to a drug overdose. If someone is laying on the ground, turning blue, one breath from death, and you give them naloxone, and it comes in a nasal spray. They call it Narcan nasal spray. This is what it looks like. And you put it in their nose, and you push this little plunger underneath. Within 2 to 5 minutes, they will be sitting up, telling you what they took. And nobody knows about it. And so what happens? You find somebody laying on the ground, they call 911. By the time the first responders get out, they have died. Had my nannies known about it, had I known about it, my daughter could still be alive today. And yet, 50,000 people died. Every one of them could have been saved if they had known about naloxone. My goal is to bring it in the country so cheap that and get it distributed that every drug addict in the country will carry it in their pocket. Just like if people have food allergies, they carry EpiPens. If they have diabetes, they carry insulin. If they have a bad heart, they carry nitroglycerin. But nobody carries naloxone because nobody knows about it. I met a woman in Washington. She had a 34-year-old daughter. Daughter had been an addict for 20 years, living at home because she couldn't keep a job. And one night she came home from a party and she said, "I'm tired, I'm going to bed." An hour later, the mother went up to wake her up. She was worried about her. She couldn't wake her up. She called 911. By the time they got there, daughter had died. And I asked the mother, I said, "Do you know what naloxone is?" She said, "No, what's that?" I said, "Unfortunately, if you had known what it was, your daughter would be alive today." And this is happening every day, 160 times. Those people that died yesterday and are going to die today could have all been saved if somebody would have given them naloxone. It is called the Lazarus drug. It brings people back from the dead, virtually. And what happens is you have receptors in your brain that control your breathing. And these receptors get coated with opioids. And they stop functioning and you stop breathing. And when the naloxone goes in and cleans off those receptors, and you start breathing again. It is the greatest miracle drug ever invented that nobody knows about. Well, I'm out there trying to promote it. I was on the heroin task force in Orange County. Mayor Teresa Jacobs started. And I got all the police officers in Orange County, all the deputy sheriffs, and the UCF Police Department carrying it about 6 months ago. And I'm happy to say that they have saved over 100 lives since then, and it just shows the power of this. If a 30-second ad on the Super Bowl or during the Academy Awards would have been about naloxone, thousands of people would be alive today as a result. So that's another one of the things that I'm pushing. We have a lot. We have 25 million drug addicts in this country. 25 million. And we have another 25 million former addicts in this country that are in recovery. You're in recovery if you have not used drugs for at least 5 years. And so we're happy to say that we have a lot of people in recovery, but we have way too many in the pipeline. And we only have enough rehabs for 10% of them. And we do have some good rehabs around Central Florida, and we have a lot of them in Florida and all over Florida. But let me tell you the fallacy of that. The insurance companies only pay for 30 days of rehab, and then they stop paying, and then, of course, the people are kicked out. Well, it takes 90 days to get over an addiction. So what's happening is people are coming out of rehab. They've been detoxed. They've been counseled, but they're not cured. So they come out of rehab, and they fall off the wagon, and they start using the same dosage that they were using when they went in, except their body has been detoxed. It can no longer tolerate that dosage. So they die. They overdose and die. And we have to change that. We have to have more rehabs. We have to make it longer. We have to get the insurance companies to pay for more time. It costs $1,000 a day for rehab, typically for rehab. That's way too much money. We can do things a lot differently and make it much more affordable. But there are so many parts of this epidemic that just boggle your mind. And we have a good, Trump has a good cabinet now. We have Jeff Sessions, the new Attorney General. He's against marijuana. I expect to see in the next few weeks or months that he will outlaw, or no, I won't say outlaw, it's already outlawed. He will enforce the law against marijuana in all the states that have it. I don't know if they'll touch medical marijuana because, you know, there's such a large percentage of the population thinks it's good, but they will definitely outlaw recreational marijuana. We have Betsy DeVos, the new Secretary of Education. I think she will hopefully put drug testing in schools, starting with middle school. So we do have a cabinet that is anti-drugs, but like everything in Washington, there's no sense of urgency. People are dying every day, and they're up there talking. Trump formed a commission on the drug epidemic, and Chris Christie heads up the commission, and our Attorney General Pam Bondi is on it. And but again, their instructions were come back in 90 days, and with a plan. In 90 days, thousands of people are going to die. There's no sense of urgency. And because people don't understand this problem, don't understand the losses that we're suffering. I wrote Trump a letter 2 days ago. Incidentally, he sent me a letter thanking me for what I'm doing against the drug epidemic, and I answered it by saying, thank you for your kind letter. However, if 160 people of our sailors were killed in North Korea, we'd be at war. Well, 160 of our citizens died yesterday, and you don't hear a whimper. I mean, it's such a tragedy that more isn't being done. But I want to thank you for giving me this ear to talk about this horrible epidemic that is killing our future generation, and hopefully all of you at least know about naloxone. Every medicine cabinet should have it. Every addict should have it. Doctors don't know about it. Spread the word. It's important. If you know anybody that's using drugs, please tell them about it. And one final thought, tell everyone, and all of you included, lock up your prescription drugs. Your medicine cabinet is the biggest drug dealer there is. Your children are getting your prescription drugs, or their friends are getting prescription drugs right out of your medicine cabinet. Lock them up. Don't keep them out of their hands. 70% of our problem is prescription drugs. 30% is heroin, cocaine. And I know you're trying to get rid of me. Heroin today is 10 times stronger than heroin 10 years ago. And if that's not bad enough, the drug dealers are adding fentanyl to the heroin. Fentanyl is 50 times stronger than heroin. And they're adding fentanyl to it because they want to see people die, because they're in competition with each other. And they basically are saying, my shit's stronger than his, because more people are dying from mine. And the drug addicts are saying, oh, I want some of that stuff because it's strong. I mean, it's crazy out there. It's crazy. We have to do something about it. Tell your friends about what you heard today. Spread the word. And when people are running for office, find out what their position on ending the drug epidemic is, because it can be ended if people really put their mind to it. Thank you very much for being a very nice audience.